Hello and welcome to another patch notes video. It's here, it's finally here. It's patch 1.20 for EU4. This is the Ming patch. It was released a couple of days ago. I'm sorry this video is a bit late. How many days? 3 days late. Sorry about that, I've been away. So, the Ming patch, which has loads of stuff about Ming, obviously, but there's some other really good stuff in this patch. Lots of really good stuff in this patch. So, we'll go through it. I have once again chopped down this let's turn off, no, it's fine. I have dropped down this list fairly drastically. It's now 8 pages long with a mere 3,000 words in it. It was 19 pages long. So you're very welcome, saving you reading all of the bits that I deem not really as important as the rest of it. I think I've left pretty much everything in, but as always, you know, the patch notes are available as always on the glorious wiki. Alright, so let's go straight. So, these expansion features, these are the ones you only get if you pay for it. Everything below this point, you get even if you don't have the new DLC. Right, so, there's a devastation system. It should really stay first. There is a devastation system, but there you go. So, states without devastation in a country with positive stability will slowly accumulate progress to become prosperous. Prosperous states produce more goods and are cheaper to develop. Okay, this is a really cool system, which I will, I'm sure, look at in great detail in a playthrough starting probably at the same time this video goes up. There's this whole new system of devastation versus prosperity. So if your province gets sieged down, if there's unrest, you get more devastation. And if I don't know what the features are that affect prosperity. I imagine high stability. I imagine religious unity, being the right religion, being the right culture. Maybe we'll look more into that. But it's a very cool system that just adds a little bit more, war-torn or prospering kind of situation. Similar to the CK2 system, I imagine. Right, you can now enact edicts in a state, increasing state maintenance by 200% for a benefit and for at least 1 year. Now, that's quite a lot. That's quite a lot. We'll have to work out how much. I imagine there'll be some maths that we'll do over the next couple of days and weeks. And then, after that's been done, we'll be able to say conclusively, alright, you should always enact the edict to give you trade power if you get at least X trade power in an important node, or you should always do the one about tax if you're earning at least, if it has 35 base tax at 0 autonomy, you should always click the one to give you more tax, because that'll work out. I imagine there'll be some maths to do to figure out excuse me, to figure out when the different edicts are valuable. We'll look at those again in great detail in a playthrough. Ages now have objectives that can be fulfilled to provide power objectives that they do. Paradox, you've written so many patch notes. Okay, first off, there are ages. Ages now have objectives to be filled. So there are 4 ages, I believe. 4? I think it's 4. Yeah, each lasting about 100 years. And is that right? I feel like there are 4. I feel like there are 4 ages, each lasting about 100 years, and you have to fulfill objectives in that year. So the first one, I think, is the Age of Exploration. And in the Age of Exploration, you have to discover America, you have to have a colony. Or is that the second age? I'm really not sure, but they're very... and you have different objectives to fulfill in them, and if you can fulfill those objectives, then you get power projection and all kinds of other things. Yes, Splendor. And you can spend it on purchasing abilities. Some of the abilities are country specific, which adds a bit more flavour to some specific countries, and most of them are not country specific. So there's lots of new stuff there. Here goes. Here are the ages: Discovery, Reformation, Absolutism, and Revolutions, which is very cool. So there's all these different abilities for each one, and you can start a Golden Era when you have 3 objectives, but you can only have 1 Golden Era. Now, this seems to me there are basically 2 times in the game you might want to activate a Golden Era to be optimal. Right? A would be right at the beginning, and B would be somewhere near the very end. Because at the very beginning you want to get that snowball rolling, right? You want to start getting territory and increasing your development and establishing yourself on the world stage. And then right at the end, you get more out of your Golden Age if you do it right at the end, because all of your numbers are just higher. Right, so it gives you goods produced, for example. You produce a lot more goods in the end game, but you don't need the money nearly as much as during the beginning. So it'll be interesting tactical choice. When do you trigger your Golden Era? Alright, so Empire of China mechanics, which is kind of like HRE, is as much as I know about it, really. So we will look into that. And it says initially held by Ming, which meaning someone else can become the Emperor of China, which would be interesting. Emperor of China now uses meritocracy instead of legitimacy. which is quite cool. Meritocracy being a new feature, of course. Decays by default and increases the skill level of hired advisors. Surely there are other things that affect it than this, I imagine. But, okay, so Ming wants to have very high skill level advisors. Makes sense. Countries in the Eastern Religion Group and both countries with Horde government can now establish tributary straits. The tributary subject will be expected to give tribute each year in the form of ducats, monarch power, or manpower. Now, the first campaign I'm going to do will be as Ming. Boring, I know, but I think it'll be the best way to... Well, it wouldn't be boring, it'll be great fun, but I mean, it's, you know, typical choice. But I feel like that'll be the best way to really get into this new system. This could be horrendously overpowered. This could be amazing, is what I mean by horrendously overpowered. You could generate loads of monarch points, and we will look into how in the playthrough. Nations will can now ask to become a tributary state under another nation in the Eastern Religion Group or with the Horde government. See, this works as well. But not just with Horde government. Alright. Add forced tributary state. Neighbouring countries. Cool. I wish you told me what it does, but that's good to know. Added forced tributary peace option, of course. Makes sense. How much does it cost? Is it proportional to their size? All these things will be useful, but they shall be learnt as we go on. Tributary states can now accept or refuse sending tribute. Trust increases if accepted, decreases if refused. A message is sent to the Overlord if refused. So, how often do they do which? If they're loyal, do they always accept? These things and more shall be learnt. Tributary states from history are now disabled if they're starting game without Mandate of Heaven DLC. That makes sense, because they don't exist without Mandate of Heaven DLC. Tributary states can call their Overlord in defensive wars, though accepting the call is optional. Does it make you a truce breaker? Does it not truce breaker, alliance breaker? Does it cost you a trust hit with everyone? Does it make them no longer a tributary state? Again, all these things and more will be learned. Tributary states don't get the subject nation penalty modifier. I believe... I actually don't know what that modifier is, so that's interesting. I should check that once I get into the game. Emperor of China can now use 20 to meritocracy to enact decrees that last 10 years and give various bonuses. Interesting, so we'll look into that. If it's hard to gain, then this could be really a costly thing to do, but depending on the bonuses, it could be great. More subject interaction for daimyos. Confucian countries can now have a harmony value. Harmony affects tolerance of true faith. Development cost of legitimacy increases yearly. It's reduced if you convert provinces to Confucianism and when harmonizing with other religions. So, what this does, yes, here you go, it tells you. Confucian countries can now harmonize with other religions within their group and religious groups. Within their group and religious groups. Other religions within their group and other religious groups? I assume that means within and without their religious group. We'll see. Once a religion has been harmonized in Confucian teachings, that religion will be treated as a Socratic religion with no malices. Now this is very cool. I would like to know, does it get the bonuses? Do you get tolerance of the true faith for a harmonized religion? We'll have to see. Manchu culture nations can now recruit banners. This is a very cool thing. So they cost corruption to recruit, which is very interesting, but they don't cost manpower. They have a discipline bonus, and they cost money to reinforce. It says they money to reinforce, but not manpower to reinforce. These are very interesting. They're kind of like a third type of troops. You've got regular troops, you've got mercs, and you've got banners. And they cost corruption to recruit. So if you can get corruption-reducing ideas and things, that would be really powerful. You can now give the order to artillery barrage for military power. How much military power? I think it's 50. Think it's 50, not certain. This creates a breach in the fort. So this creates a wall breach. That's what you need to say. This creates a wall breach. But you need 1 artillery per fort level for it. Only 1 artillery per fort level? I thought you needed enough to get a +5 bonus. I'll check that. So this basically you can spend 50 military power to get a wall breach, which could be very useful in the late game if military power is not very valuable because you're already steamrolling everyone and you want to very quickly end sieges. You just artillery barrage assault. That would be extremely costly, but could be useful. Seizing that strategical fort could come in very handy. Shogunate government type now has 3 special interactions that affect themselves and all daimyos. They look interesting. They're things like reducing liberty desire. There are others as well. Macro builder. Hooray! There's this new thing. So the diplomacy tab allows you to list specific target countries for specific diplomatic actions. So you can say basically who will accept an alliance, and it will show you on the map. Who will accept a royal marriage, shows you on the map. Things like that. It's really cool. Shinto countries now have an isolationist isolationism level that can be changed through incidents that trigger during the game. There are 8 possible incidents. So this is interesting. I don't know what isolation does. Maybe increase tech cost, also increase discipline or something? We'll have a look at that. So those are all the ones you have to pay for. Here on in, these are all new. The ages feature. I'm sorry, Paradox. I'm sorry. I've been mean to you. I said you should have said there are ages, but that's not an expansion feature. That is a free feature. Excuse me. Also, the devastation thing. I think that's, or is that an expansion feature? I'm not sure if devastation is an expansion feature. Here you go. No. It's the first free feature. There you go. That's why I didn't put it up there, because it's in the free features. Fair enough. Devastation. Provinces now have devastation counts that goes from 0 to 100%. Scorched Earth and looting now increases its value instead of having separate modifiers. Unrest slowly increases it in the province as well. So when you Scorch Earth, you increase the devastation, which has a similar effect to how Scorch Earth used to, because the higher the devastation, like that. Added the statistics button that opens endgame and statistics view to the in-game menu. Oh, cool. So you can see the thing that happens when you quit without having to quit. Very cool. Game now has 4 different ages. Absolutely. Removed absolute monarchy from the game. Replace it with a scaling mechanic called absolutism. Absolutism is so cool, by the way. So, absolutism is this modifier, like legitimacy, like prestige, which activates in the age of absolutism, which is the 3rd age, I believe. And so once you get it, it increases, if you have it, more of it, and you gain it from lots of different things, like lowering autonomy, events, all kinds of things. And you raise it if you raise autonomy, so that's going to really affect whether you want to raise autonomy anymore. And what it does is it gives you more discipline, but the big one, it gives you administrative efficiency. Up to 40% administrative efficiency at 100 absolutism, so that's a big deal. Moved religious locks before the year 1950 to be valid from script in the age of discovery and reformation only. So there are lots of things that like this. So lots of things that previously you could only do before 1950 or only after 1700 and that kind of thing. Now you can do them in certain ages. So they're committing to these age periods rather than just giving certain dates. Added better and worse comparisons to other players of the year. No one cares. We know who's best. Alright. Out of war, automatic free press now docks and picks up armies. Oh my god, that's so good. I missed that when I was going through. That's so good. So no longer, when transporting from your own land to your own land, is it far more efficient if you manually get men on the ships and take them over and send the ships back and put them on, because they used to walk onto the boats and walk off the boats. Now they'll actually dock, which is so much faster. Thank you, Paradox. That's fantastic. Replace the old Celestial Empire factions with the new ones that benefit history and their respective roles. Very cool. You can now decide to declare bankruptcy on your own if you have loans, which is interesting because there aren't many situations where you'd want to do that. Because you could take out a whole bunch more loans, build a bunch of buildings, wait for them to finish building, then go bankrupt. So I'm not sure why you'd want to declare bankruptcy. Because there's no harm. I mean, if the effects of bankruptcy scaled with how many loans you had out of your cap, then I could get behind this, but as it is, it doesn't seem very sensible. But anyway, yeah, you can declare bankruptcy. Units now... Oh, cool! Strengthened government now increases absolutism by +2, as well as legitimacy, or whatever else, presumably. So that's good to know. Game balance. Okay. Mercenaries now get priority in entering the battle inside their unit type. That's so good. That is so good. That means that you will take, if you use any mercenaries in your army, you will consistently take far less damage. It used to be just luck. I think it was just luck. So, you might have your, your brave Prussian men standing in the middle, taking all the hits, losing all your manpower. Whereas now your mercenaries are going to do that. That's a really good change. I like that. This makes sense. State maintenance is no longer 100% in the capital area, but instead -50. Why bother? What a waste of time. Doesn't really make any difference at all. Capital state now has +5 institutions written. Now that's a great change. I like that. It makes sense, right? There should be something to represent the kind of fact that lots of the intelligentsia of your country would go to the capital, because that's the center of the culture, or almost always, that's the center of culture and development in the country. The province limit for Castile, I don't know why you wouldn't just say Castile, when forming Spain as Aragon, increased to 40. Cool. So what this means, I think, it's not very clear, is that when you're Castile, when you form Spain, Aragon can only have a certain number of provinces, and they've increased it to 40, which is great. That means makes the game more playable, and you should be able to feed Aragon. I love the old strats where you could play as Castile, feed Aragon, you know, all of Europe, then click a button and get it all instantly free for you. Cord. It's glorious. So the administrative efficiency is now 30% less significant because there's absolutism, which, if you look at it, is actually a 10% gain, right? It also means you can get 40% absolutism, because if you can get your absolutism up to 100 really quick, like lower a whole bunch of provinces' autonomy, you could get 40% administrative efficiency as soon as the second age begins. That's way earlier than you could get 40% administrative efficiency. And you could get the 10%, presumably it's 10-10-10 rather than 20-20-20. So you could get 50% administrative efficiency really early. And that's only 10% less than you could get endgame previously. So this is a blob change. This is a blobbing change. And I approve of this blobbing change partly because it counters the fact that later on down we're going to see that millets, the Ottoman idea, has become about 33% less good. 33%-ish? It's gone down to 20% from 33%. It's nearly. So this counters that. This makes all countries better at blobbing and the Ottomans less good, which means there's less pressure to play the Ottomans if you want to do a kind of optimum blob campaign, which I am very much the kind of person that likes doing. Spies are no longer sent home when discovered, but instead are minus 100% of network build-up during a year. That's so good. I assume they mean for and not during. Like if they're caught in December, do they lose this penalty in January? That would be extremely odd. Presumably they mean for a year. This is brilliant. This means so much less micro in spy network building, which is amazing. Stab hitting peace offers now have been restored to 50% of war score, and if only war score is at least 50. I didn't know they'd change this. Sorry for hopefully brief silence there rather than loud cough. So what this means is if you're at 50% war score and you send someone a peace deal that's asking for 25% of war score of stuff, and they say no, they lose the stability. That's how it used to work. Apparently there was a change. I must have totally missed that. You can no longer call in allies that have a truce with someone you're attacking. Now, someone. Does that mean one of the allies of the main person or just the main person? And is this just a thing for multiplayer? Because if it means the latter, if it means you can no longer call in allies against someone with whom they have a truce as the primary war participant, you couldn't do that at the moment. The AI got a minus 1,000 penalty. Prussian militarism is now 50% harder to maintain. That irritates me so much, I'm going to delete it. Prussian militarism is already very hard to maintain. Prussian militarism now has less impact on maintenance costs of manpower, so it's weaker and it's harder to maintain. This is... I don't really approve of this one aspect of Paradox's DLC strategy. I'm perfectly on board with it. Oh, it's currently 18:21 on my clock. That's quite funny. Anyway, the things you notice when you're the EU4 player. So they bring out a patch, like the Hordes patch, and Hordes are overpowered, and everyone plays the Hordes for a bit, and everyone buys the patch because they want to play as the overpowered Hordes. Sorry, everyone buys the DLC because they want to play as the overpowered Hordes. And then they nerf the Hordes, right? And then they bring out the Prussia patch, and Prussia's overpowered, and everyone wants to buy the patch because they want to play as Prussia, so everyone plays as Prussia, and then they nerf Prussia. Same with the Ottomans in the Prussia patch. And now they brought out Ming, and apparently Ming is wildly overpowered, so everyone plays as Ming, and then in a while they'll patch it. That seems like... I mean, I'm not sure if that's intentional, but it's a brief window to play an overpowered country to encourage you to buy the patch. Sorry, buy the DLC. I hope that's not true, but yeah. Anyway, there's that. Japanese traditions now get 5% discipline instead of 10%. I think this is because you can get some discipline from one of your decisions that you can now take as the Emperor of Japan. Millets are now 20% on 33, as I said. Mercenaries now cost twice as much to reinforce. Ha ha, Lambert. If you didn't know, Lambert, someone who I've done an EU4 collab with, is very much loves using mercenaries, so they're now twice as expensive. Although, if mercenary maintenance cost reductions still work the same, then you could still get their costs down to effectively nothing, because you can get it down to something like 5 or 10% with the modifiers. Mercenary regiments now cost 10 more as base purchase price for a static 20, 35, and 40 cost per regiment. So that's pretty darn pricey. Reduced liberty to die for development in vassals. 100% liberty to die at 500 development. Good. That was way too high. They were having way too much liberty to die from development. Daimyos no longer count towards diplomatic relations for Overlord. Good. It's no longer boring to play as Japan at the start because you can constantly... I mean, for all kinds of reasons, but for one, because you no longer just bleed diplo power. Shogunate given additionally diplomat and envoy travel time to compensate for the diplomatic relations loss. Seems fair. can now only ask for at most 50% of another country's trade power. Boo. Why? This makes no sense. Someone totally, you know, kowtowing to you should absolutely have to give you 100% of their trade power if they're willing to do so. Spy networks now decay while being discovered. What? What? Oh, I see. So when your spy is in their country with a minus 100% penalty because he's not able to spy because he's been recently discovered, they decay at that point. Makes a lot of sense. Liberalism now depends on absolutism. What is liberalism? I don't know. We shall find out. Non-tributary subjects are now exempt from most disasters. Good. Remove protectorates. They're all now vassals. You can divert trade and seize territory from vassals and send officers to marches. That is so cool. So cool. We're going to have to try that out. Bankruptcies now have less impact on morale, unrest, and autonomy in only the last 5 years. So bankruptcies are much less harsh, which is interesting. Or it seems they're much less harsh. Will now never be possible to form the same tag more than once for one country. So you used to be able to tag switch to something and then to something else and then back to the first thing sometimes. Reduce the amount of states from government and technology dramatically. I don't like the states system to begin with, so I'm just going to say that one and move on. Random New World will no longer generate areas with more than 5 provinces. Oh, they had an area problem. Okay. No one uses that anyway. I don't know why they bother patching the Random New World. Having done unconditional surrender now impacts autonomy, war resorption, and institution spread like you are at peace. Okay, so the moment you sent your unconditional surrender, it now like pretends you're at peace in terms of these things. Makes sense. Devastation will now slowly decline if you have unconditionally surrendered. Makes sense. Any owned province has... All owned provinces have 0 unrest while you are surrendered. That makes sense. Nation that has unconditionally surrendered cannot take loans, nor go 0 in the treasury, and will automatically dismiss all advisors each month. Why? Why on earth would you dismiss all advisors? Well, no one ever unconditionally surrenders to the AI anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Manually increasing development now also decreases devastation. That makes sense. Does it increase prosperity? It should. Colonies no longer generate unrest. You mean while there's still colonies within provinces? That makes sense. No longer possible to increase autonomy if you don't have authority to lose. Wow. That's big. Okay, so by authority, you mean absolutism, right? If they mean absolutism, which I can't imagine what they mean by authority. Authority isn't a metric in this game. I mean, imperial authority is, but that's not at all relevant to increasing autonomy. That means you can't just play a liberal campaign, be not at all absolute, and raise autonomy everywhere, because you wouldn't have the authority, by which I assume they mean absolutism, to do so. Cav ratios removed from tech group and added to other modifiers, default to 50. And so now you've got all these modifiers, which I've left in, but I'm not going to read out, that affect your cavalry ratio. I don't approve. It's ludicrous that steppe governments, steppe hordes, that the Mongols, everyone knows when the Mongols showed up, right? They showed up with about a 25% cavalry army. That's how that happened, right? No, of course not. So I think this is very silly. But sorry, 75% cavalry army. That's not remotely how it worked. But yeah, so I don't like this. But I've left it there just because it's quite important. So there you go. This does, however, mean the Tengri have 100% still. So if you're Tengri, you can still have 100% because there's 50 here, 25 from being steppe horde, and 25. That means the northeastern, the Manchurian tribes have got lots of cool stuff in this patch. I'm definitely going to do a campaign as them at some point. Tengri now have 20% cheaper regiments, up from 10% cheaper regiments. Cool. Subjects occupying province for you will now automatically describe that province for you. Huzzah! No more trying to demand provinces in, usually for me, South and North America, that are in the freaking terra incognita, so you can't just click on them. There is now a plus 5% bonus to colonizing on the same continent as your capital. Plus 5% bonus as in chance for settlers, I assume they mean. That's cool. Bankruptcy now has devastation to the provinces. Makes a lot of sense. Clears the recent uprising flag. Ooh, that's not good. The 8 banners idea for Manchu increases the amount of banners you can raise by 25%, which makes sense. Trust gain on the start of the game is no longer the same for all subject types. On the start of the game. Does it mean like trust level? Not sure. Trust loss at the start of the game due to historic rival now applies for even for non-subjects. Makes sense. Cancel subject now has a war score cost capped at 60%. Ooh. Oh, if it cancels PU in a succession war over the entire country. That's a shame. Okay, that makes sense. So you can now go to a succession war and prevent the PU rather than take it for yourself. So if you've got really high aggressive expansion, you might want to do that. That's interesting. Sharing of maps can now be done even when at war. Obviously. Good change. Well done. Blindingly obvious change, but very glad they put it in. Independent daimyos that become subjects to the shogun or emperor will again become the daimyo government. That makes sense. Nice. Nations in debt and running deficits can no longer buy ships. aka infinite money monarch point exploit. I did not know there was such an exploit, so I'm irritated. But there you go, that's interesting. Rebel occupation is now giving the occupied modifier like any other occupation. Oh good, I thought it was already, but there you go. That should be in the bug fixtures category. Devastation now has far less impact on development cost. Devastation now have a far less impact, I mean has, firstly, but devastation didn't exist. What does it now have? No idea what about. Does it mean now has an impact on development costs? Is this just totally worded wrong? Not sure. Trade companies no longer get counted as a territory when it comes to autonomy. This is freaking huge. So, what this means is that now if you make an area, you can get it down to 0 autonomy. That's so big. This is so good for the European nations. Who should I play? Do make suggestions, by the way, who you want me to play in this patch. I'm going to play Ming. I'm going to play one of the Manchu tribes. I'm going to play Japan at some point. Who shall I play that will make good use of all this trade company change? Because that's big. You now get 4 times as much stuff from trade company provinces. That's really big. Subjects that count as independent, such as tributaries, no longer contribute to great power score. No longer. Is this just... Maybe this is a difference between Swedish and English. Paradox is Swedish, if anyone doesn't know that. But no longer contribute to great power score. Subjects that were tributaries never contributed to great power score because there weren't such subjects before this patch. Maybe they're writing these patch notes partly as they're changing their internal build, and that's why they muck these things up. Not that it matters. In debt calculations, it now calculates current interests, not the one at the end of last month. That's good. Oh no, that exploit I was talking about earlier, you can't do it anymore. Going bankrupt now destroys all buildings built in the last 5 years, which is ludicrously unrealistic, but very sensible, because it balances out the problem I was talking about earlier. So, manually removing price of trade company now makes it not produce any goods for 5 years. Big change. Have to be very careful when you remove prices from a trade company. Devastation will have a minor impact on friendly and hostile movement speed. Both? Meaning both, or it'll be different on each? You don't say if it's a good or a bad impact, so it might mean hostiles move faster, friendlies move slower, it might mean both move slower. Interesting. Spies now reduce devastation monthly by 0.1 instead of increased coring cost. Oh, spices, sorry. Okay, that's interesting. I'm glad they're not reducing coring cost anymore, because that was horrible. Provincial bonus from wool is now plus 10% local movement speed. Oh, okay, so there's less manpower coming out of all the wool provinces. You can now scorch hostile territory. Now scorching only adds a moderate amount of devastation, but it adds a 50% hostile movement penalty for 5 years. Interesting, so you can slow their armies down. Not very useful, really, because usually in EU4 it's all about getting to the big battle, winning the big battle. I guess if you scorch lots of area, can you scorch it without occupying it? That's something we'll need to look into. Removing a colonial nation... Settler growth and colony growth. Interesting. So colonial nations are now going to be growing much faster than before. Daimyo subjects no longer increase your force limit by 1, meaning more than 1 or not at all. We'll have to check that. A country is now considered to be in debt if having loans at more than 2 years of income. Okay, so just because you have a small loan doesn't mean you're going to get the whole horrible flag, oh, you're in debt and you have a deficit. Okay. You can now claim the Defender of the Faith even when your current holder has positive prestige. Good, thank you, good change. Core reduction just changed from 90% to 80%. What? That's still before admin efficiency and territorial core reductions, though. But that sucks. Why? Boo. It was really overpowered, but still, boo. Caucasian time now can't go below 6 months. Boo. Fix an AI with AI motion placement. That's why isn't this in the, this isn't the bugs fixing section. This is game balance. This is the bug fixing section is lower down. I pretty much deleted all of it, but anyway. Improve the initial placement of emotions. Cool. Colonial nations can now start war with neighbours of another religion group. Interesting. So they have a kind of special CB to declare war on neighbours of another religion group. Cool. Remove the rule you can't make a separate peace with the holder of the war goal province. Ah, interesting. When would you ever be able to make a separate piece of the whole of the Mongol province? Oh, if you declare war on a subject and then they cease to be a subject during the war, maybe. Okay. Deus Vult is now the last religious ideas. Boo. Although it does make sense. I wonder if the other order has all just shifted back one, or if they've put the finisher as the first idea. We'll have to find out. Subject types that allow embargo rivals interaction no longer allow the subject to make their own embargoes. That makes sense. AI changes. This has been cut down heavily. Heavily. I left in basically the ones I thought were important and the funny ones. There's lots of little ones that I'm sure are all very good for the game, but I don't have really the time or breath to go through all of them. So, low levels of corruption no longer make the AI not declare wars. That's hilarious. The AI was not declaring war when it had low corruption. AI will no longer cancel coring and culture with promises sieged. Good! That means you no longer have to babysit your vassals when they're coring. That's a great change. AI will now voluntarily go into bankruptcies. I really hope this is bugged. I mean, I know they'll fix it really soon if it's bugged, but I really hope it's bugged. So you see, like, France declare bankruptcy 5 times. Muck itself up. Fixed a bug with the AI who didn't want to kill your rebel. Anyway, often lead to engagements. Oh, that was really useful. It was a really useful bug, but oh well. It's a good thing this fixed. It shouldn't be going. AI, who now doesn't like to ally with nations that have gone bankrupt. Makes sense. Ever or currently, or for a while after you go bankrupt? We'll have to find out. Daimyos and shows will no longer help each other with rebels unless allied. Makes a lot of sense. Fixed issues causing AI to break royal matches too often. That was a huge issue. I would sometimes look over a country and realise, blooming heck, I've got a minus 400 opinion of them because they broke 8 royal marriages. Like, what's going on? Daimyos and the Shogun will no longer help each other, and I've already read that one. AI now uses spy actions more based on certain circumstances rather than just because it can. Good, that makes a lot of sense. Fix the AI would take many months to piece out, it's about 100% more today. Good, excellent fix. Fixed an issue that caused the AI to recruit way too many mercenaries instead of regular mercenaries. Good, all marvellous fixes. AI is less having to declare trivial wars. That's good. Declaring trivial wars is a classic way to block. AI is now slightly more brave and carpet sieging. Uh-oh. Good change. I'm for the AI becoming smarter, but this could be dangerous to my strategy of having no forts. AI warriors now consider land given to their subjects in a peace deal as given to themselves. Obviously. Thank you. Good change. AI no longer private where allies have trade power. Good. It sometimes broke your alliances because it made you to test them so much. Interface changes. There's quite a few. We're going to go through these. But there's quite a few interface changes. Excuse me. State view is now a new separate tab with all state-related mechanics there. Cool, good change. Zone of control map mode no longer striped unowned provinces when you have an unowned province selected. That makes a whole lot of sense. Development map mode now scales to maximum development, and selecting a country in the development map mode will now limit the scaling and carrying to that country's provinces. This is great. This is really great. So you can, if you're seeing, okay, where's my highest development province? You click on, or several of your highest development provinces, or your lowest development provinces. You can click on this and it'll easily show you with something that scales to your development, to the development of your provinces, that is, where that is. It's very helpful. The tooltip for spy network size in your own country's diplomacy list will now list all the active spy networks you have. Interesting. Navies can no longer get coloured in colour to your enemy. Good. Independent nation modifier changed to base. I don't really know what that means. So there's lots of new stuff in here. And those first ones are the most important ones, I think. Map of devastation is great. But there's lots of stuff in here that I'm not going to go through. You know, I encourage you to pause it and read it all, because it's, you know, plenty of it might be somewhat interesting to you. But I'm not going to read this much. Look at all of that. Just a couple of things in the script one. It's no longer possible to use Prussian monarchy via the ennoble estate disaster. Good. And now, here's all the new disasters linked to these rather than time. So the Peasants' War can only happen in the first 100-ish years. That's good to know. Religious turmoil can now only trigger in the Age of Reformation. Also very useful. The Liberalism disaster can now only trigger in the Age of Revolutions. I don't know what this disaster is. The English Civil War can only trigger in absolutism. French Revolution can only trigger in a revolution. That makes a lot of sense. War's religion only in the Reformation. Makes a lot of sense. English Civil War in the Age of Discovery. Oh, that's quite early. I thought it was a bit later than that normally. Interesting. Same for the Castilian Civil War. The Count's feud's only in Reformation, and the Time of Troubles is now only in absolutism. So those are all important changes to note. You no longer need to avoid these things except in these ages. Hejaz is now a vassal of the Mamluks in 1444. Now, that's bigger than it might seem. Because the Mamluks were already fairly even against the Ottomans. There were lots of things that could cause the Mamluks to beat the Ottomans in the past patch. If there was a big attack from Hungary at the same time as the Ottomans went after the Mamluks, there were lots of things that could result in a Mamluk victory over the Ottomans. So this could be a game changer. This could make the Mamluks take the Ottomans on more often, which would be interesting. I'd like a more diverse kind of Middle Eastern situations, because usually, you know, it's just okay. Oh, it's the Ottomans again. Oh, yep, it's the Ottomans again. I know it's quite historical, but it'd be interesting for a more balanced play in the area. Trade nodes will now never transcend areas' borders. Provinces in the same area, provinces in the same area will belong to the same node. What provinces belong to what trade nodes has always been changed in many places globally. So we'll have to see how much they've actually changed it, but that could make some very interesting changes. I imagine lots of them will center around the Asia and the East. Asia and the East is what I mean to say. Effects, by which I assume they mean events. There we go. Events giving you advices, now telling you the effects in the tooltip. Nice. Now, these are a couple of things about the Crimea. So, Crimea will no longer voluntarily submit to the Ottomans more often because they're AI, which I didn't know they did, but I'm glad to know, because I was always baffled by how I always saw them submit to the AI, but they never submit to me. Lowered the base chance of AI voluntarily submitting to the Ottomans. Cool, so it's now basically like everyone was for the player. Added a disaster to the Empire of China if they do not have at least 2 accepted Chinese cultures. So basically, if you're about to become the Emperor of China, and make sure you've accepted 2 Chinese cultures. Added government change to country decisions have a cooldown of 25 years. No, that solves some exploits, unfortunately, that I won't tell you about because that's just too sad, because they are now gone. Added disaster for the Empire of China when bordering a strong independent horde. So do not independent any strong independent hordes. Good to know. Iron and copper can now appear in more provinces in the Americas. Good to know. Added a caution country disaster. We'll have to look into that. Ottomans no longer start with calls on Ramazan and Dulkadir. That is a pretty big change. It's less free land for the Ottomans and more help for the Mamluks. Could make a difference. Country that converts from Christianity will no longer fault another country for closing down the Patriarchate. Cool. Odds for this is a massively stripped down bug fix, by the way. There were loads. Odds for the Burgundian inheritance will now be more consistent regardless of the validity of the candidates. Please, couldn't Paradox. Couldn't you have just told us what the new odds were? It'd be so much nicer if you would. Fix an exploit when adding the HRE multiple times due to lag. Fix an exploit that allows any more diplomats than available. And disaster modifiers now get removed when the country breaks. All 3 exploits that I'd enjoyed using are now, tragically, of the past. It's a good thing, really, because exploits, you know, it's better just to play pure Iron Man, and not scum it, but, it's a shame. So there you have it. That is the 1.20 Ming patch released and available in a Steam store near you, and the DLC Mandate of Heaven is also out there and available. It looks awesome. I'm going to be playing it in about 5 minutes. I hope you'll join me in playing it and join me in watching my different campaigns. Any suggestions for campaigns are more than welcome down below, and I shall see you all next time. Bye bye.